Welcome, everyone. I call the May 14th, 2025 Landmark Preservation Board meeting to order. Before we move on to the agenda items, I'd like to acknowledge our hybrid meeting format. The City of Bothell is providing the option to attend this meeting either in person or remotely via Zoom. For those participating via Zoom, the chat and question functions are not available for use to ensure compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act. We have a public comment agenda item at the beginning of the meeting. This time is for comments on issues not on tonight's agenda. Please limit these comments to 3 minutes. Please note that the City of Bothell does not tolerate verbal harassment, and please remember this during your comments. Public comment will be allowed both in person and via Zoom. Those wishing to comment via Zoom were asked to submit an online form by 3 p.m. today. People wishing to submit written comments were asked to submit those comments by 3 p.m. Email was encouraged as well and will be acknowledged. Those in attendance may also make comments and have been asked to indicate the desire to comment on the sign-in sheets. The Imagine Bothell notice, city website, and tonight's agenda all provided information to the public for providing comments. A call-in number was provided on the meeting agenda for members of the public who wish to call in by phone to listen live to the meeting. For our phone-in callers, during staff presentations, staff will make every effort to specify which materials they are referencing so everyone can follow along. At this point, we will take a moment to take roll of the board members by position number. Please unmute your microphone and say here when I call your name. Board Member Thomas.
Here.
Board Member Babajanov. Not here. Board Member Nelson, I am here. Board Member Oyujoti. No. Board Member Musiker.
Here.
Board Member Salazar. Board Member Sampi.
Here.
In addition, the following city staff are in attendance. Christian Gitz, Deputy Community Development Director, City of Bothell, and Adam Alsbrook, Williamette Cultural Resource Associates. Before we begin, I'd like to reiterate some meeting guidelines. For all meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. Mute your microphone when not speaking. Please state your name before speaking. And for those making presentations, please pause periodically to ask if there are any questions. For board members, at the appropriate times, I will be calling on each member by position number order, asking if they wish to speak or ask a question. I'll be doing this when it is time to vote. If you want to speak, please indicate this by raising your hand. I will call you as I see you. This will help avoid the problem of two people speaking at the same time. Identify yourself before you ask to speak, make a motion or second a motion, or participate in debate. And lastly, please mute your microphone when not speaking. If there are any objections, please raise your hand. See none. Non-agenda public comment. If there are any members of the public here, they may speak now about items that are not on the agenda for tonight. Staff, is there anyone here or in the waiting room?
There's nobody who signed up for public comments and no comments received, and there's nobody in the waiting room.
Thank you so much. All right, approval of minutes. The meeting minutes for our November 13th, 2024 regular meeting were included in our packet to review. Would a board member like to make a motion? If so, please indicate by raising your hand. By saying that, yeah. Board Member Sapi.
I move that we approve the minutes as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any debate on that? Seeing none. So let's take a vote. Board Member Thomas.
Aye.
Myself, aye. Board Member Musiker.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Mosker was not seated on the board, and so it would be an abstention tonight.
Okay. Oh, hi, thank you. And Board Member Sampi.
Aye.
Passes 3-0. Okay, motion passes. So looks like we go to new business. The current Landmark Preservation Board officers are Chair Andrew Nelson and Vice Chair Victoria Sampi, who were elected at the May 28th, 2024 regular meeting of the Landmark Preservation Board. Would a board member like to make a motion to nominate a board member to serve as chair? If so, please indicate by raising your hand. Yeah. So I will say, I think that I'm going to bring this up, is that I likely will be moving out of Bothell at the end of the year, near the end of the year. So I'm not sure if I can, I could serve as chair again, but only be for like 5 months. So I just want to put that out there. I mean, I'm willing to do that, but I just want to make sure that people kind of know, you know.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. That's really unfortunate. Where are you moving? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, just
No,
you
no,
don't have to be specific.
No, that's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Well, we're thinking about moving to Seattle or eventually Minneapolis. I want to go to the University of Washington or the University of Minnesota. I've been going to school at Cascadia for a bit. Great school, by the way. I don't know if anyone has kids or anything, but it's a great school. That's just FYI to them. But yeah, no, Bothell's great, though. I want to reiterate that. I love Bothell, too, so.
You know, we will, you know, review the bylaws, of course, and any other applicable city ordinance as it pertains to that. But you know, we can cross that bridge when we get to it. It's really the kind of the prerogative of the board.
Yeah, no, that's fine, yeah.
You know, as to who the nominated chair and vice chair are.
No problem. Well, thank you. No, I just wanted to put it out there, so I appreciate that.
Taking that into consideration, I would like to nominate Andrew Nelson to continue as chair of the board.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Pending your checking of the ordinances.
Thank you. So, the motion to nominate Andrew Nelson has been made by Board Member Thomas and seconded by Board Member Sompe. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll now take a vote. Board Member Thomas,
Aye.
Board Member Nelson, I'll say aye. Board Member Musiker,
Aye.
and Board Member Sompe.
Aye.
Okay, passes 4-0. Would a board member like to make a motion to nominate a board member to serve as vice chair? If so, please indicate by raising your hand or turn on your microphone. Okay.
I'm going to nominate Ray. I'll nominate Ray.
I'll second that. Board Member Thomas has been nominated. There has been, by Board Member Sompe, I am the second. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, we'll now go to a vote. Board Member Thomas,
Aye.
myself, aye. Board Member Musiker,
Aye.
and Board Member Sompe.
Aye.
Passes 4-0. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Now reports from staff.
All right. I can clarify the question, just reviewing the bylaws real quick. If there is ever a vacancy of a position, whether they are a chair, vice chair, it would be filled or appointed at the next regular meeting for the duration of that time. So if it's a few months. Reports from staff. So it's been a while since we've met. Staff just wanted to point out a couple of projects that are going on that will involve the Landmark Preservation Board. So right now we're going through the downtown sub-area plan update process. It is just kicking off. We are in the process of securing an outreach consultant to do a very medium to heavy lift for outreach and engagement with a significant amount of new population in the downtown area. Want to make sure that we are engaging the current residents of downtown, those that use downtown, whether it's on a daily basis, weekly basis, or as they visit, and look to explore ways to set ourselves up for the next 20 years. And part of that involves the Landmark Preservation Board with the preservation overlay. So at a future meeting, we will be coming back with the staff member or staff group that are working on that to provide some general overview discussion, seek some input from the board, how that may impact what you guys do here. and just make sure we're capturing those that we want to involve in the process. So it's a 2-year project, so it won't be wrapping up until the end of 2026. So we are in the initial. We've gone through scoping. We are in the initial outreach and engagement phase. So you'll start to see information around town about that. The second thing that I wanted to bring up, we did receive funding within the biennial budget for a historic resources inventory. That is going to kick off starting around Q4 of this year and run through the middle of 2026. So that's an opportunity for us to work with the Landmark Preservation Board and really make sure that we've captured everything that's out there, eligible properties, those that we know are there, how that inventory is done, and then how it can be beneficial to our codes that we use on a daily basis, how it can help the community understand what's out there, where it is, what it is, and yes, so that's funded and will be kicking off later this year.
Is this digitized yet? Is it available online to residents in the city?
The inventory?
Yeah.
The inventory that we have currently is a list within the comprehensive plan of all of those registered
It's just the
properties.
registered properties. It's not the 50-year inventory. I'm curious because I've been involved since we started our initial inventory.
Right.
Okay, you've seen it.
No, so I've seen the digital copies, because the hard copies got converted to digital copies.
Okay.
The digital copies are housed on the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation, Washington Information System
Okay,
for
so it is.
Architectural and Archaeological Data, or WIZARD. And so, that's part of the effort, that Kristen was talking about was, the inventory update, also surveying properties that have become age eligible for historic designation since those surveys were completed. One of the challenges is that Bothell is one of 2 municipalities in the state that use WIZARD as their inventory and in a regulatory capacity. And so, there are some known flaws in locations in particular being inaccurate in some cases. Not all, some. And so that's going to be part of the survey effort, is to do a blanket, correction of all the locations. For instance, anytime I come across an error in an address or a location that doesn't correspond, I notify DAP and DAP corrects it.
Okay.
And so we just do it on kind of an ad hoc basis. But what we're talking about is a comprehensive, new reconnaissance level survey of historic resources in the city to augment what's already been done. The other part of that is also going to be determining what still exists, what no longer exists, and then in some cases what has changed. And so it's a big effort. It's going to be a big effort. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah. Because I think one of the last major surveys was 2002. If I remember the date correctly, I think it was 1988, and then there was a 2002 update. So if you go back 50 years from 2002, you're only at 1952. And so there's a lot of resources that were built after 1952 in Bothell. So that's a little bit of further clarification on where that information is housed. And so if you go into WIZARD, and any member of the public can access the front-facing non-archaeological data. And so you can go in, you can get a login credential from the state. If you don't have one, I can help you get one and just show you how to do it. And you can go in and click on the little widget. I call them widgets. I'm sure there's probably, it's a data point. and you click on it and it pops up with the corresponding what's known as a historic property inventory form on that particular cultural resource that's been documented previously. So, and then, and just kind of as a blanket comment, it's like if any board member is having trouble accessing any of that information, it's like, that's what I'm here for. That's what city staff is here for. And if you've ever got a question about a cultural resource within the city of Bothell, that's what we're here for. And just, get in touch with us and we'll get you the documentation.
The reason I asked was going back to those first historic data points. Barbara Grace put together her own form based on what the state had, which was paper. And it's evolved till we finally had a real state form that could be used. But even I knew those were dated. And then when we had budget, we prioritized doing that, which is why it's a little up and down and better in some instances than others. So getting it straightened out a little bit, getting it in the state records so it can be accessed is really a priority.
Yes. And so the good thing is that now, any new property that's surveyed for whatever reason, that's born digital within the DAP Wizard, digital repository. And then the older records, surveys that are older than 10 years are usually, they need to be updated. And so, for both individual resources, but also like citywide. But just because standards change, reporting standards change, DAP has a very robust reporting standard. It's getting it all squared away because the city uses it as a regulatory tool.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of questions. I don't know if this is a good time or not. That have been raised by the discussion here. The inventory, we're talking about physical properties, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Not city records, not historical records, resources. You said cultural resources, and I think that particular phrase, in my mind, goes beyond physical properties.
Okay, let me rephrase. Historic built environment.
Okay. Have we ever done any kind of inventory of historical records for Bothell? What are the resources for those? What are the...
I am not aware of one. Doesn't mean that one hasn't happened.
I believe the museum has that, but don't quote me on it. Check with them because the board has used their resources.
They're one resource,
Yeah.
4 resources.
Yes.
Okay. But we don't really have an inventory of...
We also talked to the University of Washington and to the regional groups in the past. University of Washington will not share their archaeological resources. Understandably, given the sensitivity of their location, and they're trying to protect them. And that's basically the upshot of what we got. The regional resources have been in a state of flux, is my understanding. So we don't always know where they are, and it's kind of if you need the information, I would go through you because, it's no longer go down to Sandpoint and check in and see.
Correct. I mean, at the individual historic resource, at the individual historic built environment, resource that we're talking about at that individual level for King County, the best records that we have are the real property record cards, which are housed with the Washington State Archives out in Bellevue. Beyond that, Snohomish County is more hit and miss, as the experienced board members are aware. There is some information, it comes out in dribs and drabs, and it all depends on property. But the Bothell properties that are in Snohomish County, the documentation is much harder to obtain. Things, like secondary sources, like directories and things of that nature, are at the King County Library branch in Bellevue, in downtown Bellevue. Interestingly enough, they're not in Bothell. They're in Bellevue, because I've been there several times doing research on properties in Bellevue. But yeah, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think there has been a comprehensive survey, of those type of textual, photographic, artifactual things. It's like we were only speaking of historic built environment, buildings, structures, objects.
The upshot of it is, it's much appreciated, okay?
So there's a little bit of a flip side to it. So one of the things that Christian, alluded to and mentioned was, we really need the help of the board members and the help of the public to make us aware of resources that are hidden from view and tucked back from public rights of way that nobody knows about except for, hey, Mr. Jones down the road, he lives in a house designed by so-and-so. It's, Bothell's unique in that regard because it is so many parts of the city are just shielded off from public view, and that's one of the things it's one of the character defining features that I think people like about Bothell. But it makes it a challenge to do windshield surveys and reconnaissance level surveys of historic built environment resources from public rights of way without legal rights of entry. So we're going to be really, asking the board, to contribute in that regard and to submit your input on, what should be surveyed. And we're talking about not just individual resources, but also themes. We call them themes, such as a type of building that, everybody finds interesting and things like that. So we can talk more about that as we get closer to scoping the survey.
Just to be clear on that, you're thinking like some of the mid-century moderns and some of our other,
Yeah, some of
some of these, the little bungalows is what I was trying to define. I couldn't think of a good word because they're little bungalows.
right. And so, particularly like some of those properties that had traditionally been larger parcels, because they were farmsteads, and then they got gradually wooded along the edges and, started to really kind of turn in on themselves, just being shielded from public, view. Those are the sorts of things. And it's like those 1950s, 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, into the 1970s, when we start getting these modernist kind of ramblers and rancheros and everything out there. Those are the things that, have all become age eligible, in large numbers of them have become age eligible since the last survey.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I did have, if there are no other questions, I did have a couple of other things that I did want to just mention under staff report. The next is just, talking about designation, designating historic built environment resources with the goal, this is an aspirational goal, of designating two new resources listed in the Bothell Register of Historic Landmarks per year. There's relatively few historic built environment resources designated like this in Bothell. Some of the resources on the Bothell Register of Historic Landmarks are not residences, they're not commercial buildings, they're not institutional buildings, they're not churches, they're not schoolhouses. Some of them are, one of them is a fire truck, the other is a portion of brick road. What's that? Cemeteries, yes, yes. So, it's a register that's got a limited number of resources that are so designated, and also, like, it's a relatively small sample of the extreme richness of the built environment in Bothell. And also just, reflective of everything. So just wanted to mention that as well. And then finally, last but not least, I did just want to provide an update. There's one case that the board has reviewed for which we have outstanding mitigation, and that's the Main Street project, the demolition of the former Wells Fargo. And so that mitigation has not been submitted to staff for review. But I did just want to go ahead and mention that to the board, that, we are tracking all the cases where mitigation is required, and keeping the board informed, in case, in these cases, so that when these agreements are being fulfilled. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's the end of the staff report.
Thank you. Are there any reports from board members? I don't have much of a report, but just a thank you. I've learned a lot from this board. I'm continuing to learn a lot. I'm proud to serve on it, and I'm proud to be a Bothelite. So I just want to say that too. Just put that out there. I'll ask one more time. Is there any reports from a board member?
I wanted to raise an issue from our minutes. It said at the last meeting that I suggested a preview of the sub-area plan. Was that the downtown sub-area plan? Is that what you were referring to in terms of the 2-year project?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a timeline on the board preview of that?
We don't at this point, but we anticipate sometime either midsummer to early fall, as we go through these first initial phases, as we're gathering information and reaching out to others, Parks Board, and Landmark Preservation Board.
The plan has been set, though. It's just the 2-year process is to get local input on it.
The scope has been set as far as the timeline and what we are seeking to do, but it's really going to be community fed as far as what we hear back through surveys, outreach, how that guides us through the process, and that has not begun as we're going through that now. So we'll be doing a lot of outreach and engagement over the course of the summer, and that brings value with sort of what a conversation with any board or commission or city council, what can come out of those conversations. Here's what we've heard. What are your thoughts? What can you add? That's how we envision, incorporating boards such as yours in the discussion. Similarly, when we bring it to Parks Board, there's a park that's in downtown that we want to make sure they're aware of how the downtown plan integrates with the park. How will the downtown plan, what we've heard from the community, integrate with landmark preservation? So, yeah, I would say early fall is likely when we would be back here with an overview of what we've heard and where we're headed. So, nothing preordained. Just here's what we're looking to accomplish and have a discussion about what input you all can bring to the table.
Is the current outline as far as the downtown sub-area that will be in these discussions, is that available on a city website?
Yeah, the Engage Bothell platform has information on the downtown sub-area plan work, as well as the housing action plan, climate action plan, urban forestry plan that are going on currently. So those 4 large plans that are happening, they're all, information on all of those is accessible through Engage Bothell.
Great. Also, I had, at a previous meeting, I had suggested, and I believe I sent in to Nick, suggested changes in the Bothell Code for landmarks preservation. And I think that was supposed to be reviewed by staff and city attorneys.
And I can look into that. At this point, within the planning work plan, we've got it built out for the next few years as far as what code updates we have the capacity to approach with 4 major plan projects going on, with state law requirements for new codes that we've got to adopt and implement. But I'll check back with staff on what those were, and kind of feed them into our docket if possible.
Okay. I had one more question. Who actually sets and approves the agenda for Landmarks Preservation Board?
What do you mean approve?
Well, we get an agenda, right, sent
Yeah.
out to us, so somebody has to say, well, this is the agenda, right?
I mean, city staff sets the agenda.
The board doesn't set its own agenda.
The board does not set its own agenda.
And why is that?
The process by which any board or commission, their agendas are established, starts with city council and how they're guiding and approving, our work plan for items to consider. The reactionary, role of the Landmark Preservation Board to review demolition proposals under the current title. So it would, in order for us to consider amendments, say to Title 22, that's something that City Council needs to approve and identify as far as where that fits in with our work plan. We brought the work plan to them back in February with a number of amendments that we're planning to work through, identifying work such as the historic resource inventory and where to fit that in with staff time, among the litany of other projects that we've either have to do or council wants us to prioritize. So we follow that direction, and we can make recommendations based on what we hear if we run into problems, like we do with any suggestions on a code that we might see an unintended consequence with how a development standard has been written from the past. We'll put it in our parking lot and we'll bring it forward when we have time. But as far as how the agenda is established, it's based on what projects need review under Title 22 and need to go before the Landmark Preservation Board, or if the bylaws require, such as tonight, coming here to establish chair and vice chair positions as required the first meeting after new members are appointed.
Well, I'm just curious because the powers and duties, responsibilities of the board extend quite a bit beyond merely reviewing demolition, which I don't think we've done any of in the last 7 years that I've been on the board. So I expect to see some changes in that. If it's necessary to go to the council with the changes in the code, I'm prepared to do that. I'm also prepared to introduce it to the board here for their either review or approval. But it seems to me that I've heard from the council that they want to democratize Bothell city government a bit more. And I'm not seeing that in terms of the scope of our work. And it appears from what you're saying that it's not on staff docket because that docket is controlled by the city council. Is that correct?
That's correct. City Council directs staff on our work plan.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'll ask one more time, but any other reports from board members? See none. Would a board member like to make a motion to adjourn? If so, please indicate by raising your hand or just go ahead.
I move that we adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, board member Sompi moves that we adjourn. Board member Thomas seconds. We will now take this to a vote. Board member Thomas.
Aye.
Board member Nelson, aye. Board member Musiker
Aye.
and board member Sompi.
Aye.
Passes 4-0. Thank you.